the Finance and Administrative Committee. It looks as if we have the attendance of both Mr. Davidoff and Ms. Fay.
Yes.
And with that, I will move to business items. And I believe I will hand it over here to Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pete Privatera, Chief Financial Officer for the town. I'd like to talk about the first and second item. They go hand in hand. The appropriation ordinance is for the authorization for the sale of bonds to build a new Eisenhower pool and bathhouse. The current facility was built in 1964, and frankly, it's got a lot of issues, and it's not economical to try to fix those issues. A decision was made that we need to replace that pool. We did have funding further on down the road in the capital budget, but the problem is the pool shut down during this aquatic season, and unless we move quickly on this, we won't have a pool available for a couple of years. So this ordinance, since it is more than $500,000 and is a capital ordinance, not only does it require a public hearing, there's a public petition process, which means that it'll be submitted tomorrow. I'm assuming there'll be a public hearing at the January meeting, and then it'll be held for 30 days, I believe, for a petition process if anyone in the public starts to generate one. So my assumption is that by mid to late February, this process will be completed. The problem is that we need to move it along much quicker. We need to hire a design team to start the design immediately, because if we wait to hire someone in February, there won't be enough time to design the pool and start the construction season, which means the pool will not be ready in time for the 2023 aquatic season. So the second item is the appropriation resolution for $149,000. Excuse me. What I'm proposing is that we authorize that resolution. We appropriate that money from a tax overpayments account. If that's approved tomorrow night, we've already gone through the RFP process. We can hire the design team the following day. They can start working on the design. By the time the bond authorization is ready, they'll have a design in place. We can go out to bid, and it takes over a year to build this, but we'll have the pool open for the 2023 aquatics season. If we don't approve the resolution and we just go with the authorization ordinance, then it's not going to be done in time for the 2023 season. It'll be shut down for a 2-year period. One thing about the bond authorization ordinance, there's language in there that allows us to reimburse the town for the $149,000. So once the bond authorization is complete, we can put $149,000 from that issue back into the tax overpayments account, because it was written that way. It allows us to cover those costs. And one other piece of this, it's not directly related, it's indirectly related, is that as part of the town manager's proposed capital budget for next year, he's going to propose that we deauthorize $2 million for the flood mitigation infrastructure project that's already approved. He's doing that because when we get to the appropriation of the Arpa funds, you'll see that there's money in there to do that project from the Arpa funds to start it. So, in summary, I'm asking for the a passage of 2B, the resolution appropriating $149,000, and the ordinance for the construction of the Eisenhower pool and bathhouse. Hopefully, we'll be able to fit it within the time frame we think it can happen, and have the pool open by the aquatic season in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Does anyone on the committee have any questions concerning items A and B? Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question. I do have a comment. I do think that this course of action seems to be expeditious and reasonable. We've already lost the 2021 season. We're going to lose 2022, and we really can't afford to lose 2023. So it seems to be a prudent course of action to let's get this designed, and let's get the bonding funding in place, and then we can reimburse ourselves for the design costs. So I think it's well thought out and it's reasonable and makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you.
Yeah, agreed. We appreciate sitting on the Human Services Committee before this, and when this issue came up, we appreciate the staff's moving this to the top of the priority list and expediting this for the residents. I know that a lot of people appreciate or use that pool, and it's great to see that we're going to be able to move forward on this item and speed up the timeline for fixing what was an unfortunate another loss of COVID for that pool.
May I?
Yep.
Something.
Hey, Mary, can you just like either show your hand? I just can't see when you.
I apologize. I'm not in a great place with technology tonight, so I apologize. If I put the screen on, then you won't. The whole thing jumbles up.
Gotcha.
So I'm sorry about that. But I agree, and I was on the Human Services Committee last year too, and I know the project's been approved and moving along. And I don't. Mr. Davidoff, maybe you can refresh my memory. This is not anything new in terms of numbers adding to our previous capital plan or budget. It's just a matter of adopting it through the council officially, correct?
I'll ask Mr. Privatera to answer the question.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pete Privatera, Finance Director. I believe the appropriation we had in 24-25 was $1.5 million. I believe Mrs. Rubino Turco was going to supplement that with funds from other capital accounts. I increased the authorization to 2.5 million because I didn't want to take a chance that if the bids for construction came in slightly over 2.3 million, we would have to go back and ask for another supplemental capital authorization. We're only going to bond for what we spend. So, it is a little higher than what we originally planned for out in 24-25, I believe. But my understanding is that Ms. Rubino Turco received the estimates from facilities, and I think they're solid estimates. And again, I put a little buffer in there just to be sure that if the bids come in a little higher, we won't be bogged down by having to go back and asking for more money. And I don't know if Helen wants to comment on that, but that's my understanding.
That seemed pretty thorough, Mr. Privatera. Mary, is that helpful?
Oh, it's very helpful, but I just think we need to be disclosing the fact that when this was planned for and budgeted for, we're talking about more. So I just think the council needs to be informed of that. That's all.
Well, the reason, Mary, I would say also the reason for that is that we are moving up the timeline, and because the cost of doing any kind of construction at this point is completely out of whack with what is reality. It's fluctuating constantly, and that's the reason why it's not. Yeah.
I'm not questioning the rationale. I supported the project. I still do. I just think we need to be more transparent because I think numbers are moving all over the place, and if it's going to be more than what we had originally put aside, and that's good rationale, get it. I think people just need to be made aware. That's all.
Noted. Thank you. So with that, I don't see any other questions. We'll move to item C. Mr. Privatera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Pete Privatera, Finance Director. Normally, we would come to council with this in September, early October, when our auditors are complete with their preliminary work. Unfortunately, our auditors have been dealing with staffing issues, and this is taking more time than we anticipated. We received these numbers not too long ago, and we confirmed them, and I have my financial services manager, Lisa Newton, is here, and we had a long conversation with the external auditors, and we feel comfortable with this $1,740,000. It might change slightly, but it won't change in any significant manner. What we're proposing to do with this is, number one, transfer $790,000 into an unallocated CNRE account. As you know, CNRE is funded with either a fund balance from CNRE or a general fund contribution. If we transfer this into CNRE, it'll bring our fund balance up to, I think, a little under 1.2 million, and that can be used for future appropriation for capital purchases. Number two, transfer 400,000 of this into an accrual account for tax appeals. We still have two major cases out there, and I've had some discussion with the assessor. This will cover any exposure that we might have, but I don't want to get into any detail on these. But that would be the second transfer, and it's an accrual account. And if we find that we don't need it upon settlement, then we transfer that money into the general fund as prior year taxes. And the third piece of this is allow the balance of $550,000 to flow to fund balance so the town can maintain its 9.1% fund balance ratio. Again, last year, this was all happening in the middle of the pandemic. However, if you recall, our building permits were strong, our conveyance tax was strong, there was a lot of houses being sold. Our property taxes came in very strong. We collected in 93.3. We had a lot of savings on the expenditure side. The libraries were closed, so we weren't hiring part-timers. We didn't hire part-timers for leisure services. And also during the course of the year, we held back roughly $385,000 from departments. So we were able to generate a significant surplus to be able to make this transfer. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that, Peter. Well, I guess we can call it even. We have to pay for a new pool, and then we have new income coming in. So I'm just kidding. It's COVID has been an interesting time here in West Hartford, as it has for everywhere else. Peter, if you'd like to just proceed down, because we're gonna have to walk through all of these. So I'm just gonna give you freedom to just move on to each item here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda is the resolution to appropriate a portion of the American Rescue Act. And excuse me, that's the fire chief. I'm going to not take his call. The American Rescue Act. Would you like me to go through every item on the list and give you a brief overview? I'll whatever your pleasure is.
I don't think you need to go through each item because we've had this available to us for over a week now, but I would pose it to members of the committee who do have some questions about what these are. I think if you could, Peter, if you could just kind of summarize how we came to this list based on where we started and where we are, sort of, I think that's pretty helpful.
Sure. The town manager had prepared a list a while ago, and I believe he shared it with council on appropriation of funds. We went through that list, and some of the proposed expenditures, we felt that we needed more time to review with council. But some of the items on the list, we felt we can move forward right away. And there are a couple of minor adjustments, but the biggest change here is item number 1, the flood mitigation infrastructure improvements for $3.2 million. If you recall, I just mentioned that we have $2 million in the budget that we are going to deauthorize in order to authorize that particular line item. And this is for permitting, survey, and design of the flood mitigation infrastructure project, which is a significant expense and will span a number of years. And this is only the design permit and planning phase. Dwayne Martin, the town engineer, is on tonight with us. If anyone wanted to get into more specifics about it, but we're at a point right now where we put this on this agenda because the engineering firm who we have a contract with basically notified us and said, look, if we don't start moving on this project now, you're never going to be able to spend all your ARPA money in time for the deadline. So that's why that particular item is on the agenda tonight. All the rest of the items we felt were appropriate. You know, there's a lot of equipment on here. There's you know, initiatives for cybersecurity. There's some improvements in town hall. You know, there's advanced life supports equipment requested by the fire department, all in our opinion appropriate for ARPA funding. We do have the body cameras on here, the police body cameras, the entire amount. We did appropriate $350,000 of CNRE fund balance in the current year as the first year payment. However, if you approve this, we will not need that 350,000, and that can go to other projects. You know, there's some big ticket items on here. You know, surveillance cameras, the mobile command vehicle, and Chief Riddick is with us tonight if there was any questions about that, and upgrades to some of the facilities. But all in all, we felt that these items could move forward in a timely fashion, so we can start spending down some of that ARPA funding. And I'll try to answer any questions you might have on any individual project. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. I'm excited about this list because I think there's a couple of really important things that we are moving quickly on, particularly on the flood mitigation, which I think just everyone on the screen has been impacted in some way, and we know that we have a huge problem here in town that we need to work on. This is just kind of a percentage of the down payment, I would say, to get this fully rectified here in town. I'm also excited to get the body cameras finally purchased. I know, Chief, this has been a long time coming for you, and we appreciate that this is moving forward. The only question I have is just a slight detail on the town surveillance cameras and kind of what we're doing there. But other than that, I'm also excited. I'm happy to see that we are putting money into WHCI. You know, they've been kind of the lifeline through COVID for the town and have done an excellent job in making sure that the people view and see what we're doing in a transparent way. But yeah, Chief, if you could just touch briefly on that town surveillance cameras, that would encapsulate my questions.
Good evening, everyone. The amount, I believe, is about $500,000. What we're trying to do is create and expand a camera program in West Hartford. If you're familiar with the C4 in Hartford, there's cameras that start off with a small program with a public and private partnership, which expanded now to hundreds of cameras throughout the city of Hartford. Waterbury has also undergone over the last couple of years. It's sort of started when yours truly was there, but I can't take credit for it. Other people jumped in for that, and they've expanded that now to a mini C4 when they have cameras, and it's being I would hate to say watched 24/7, but access to cameras, and you have a center with intel personnel, law enforcement, private sector reviewing video. Most recently, I believe Wethersfield has allocated money towards this and has started a program and is trying to expand with the ultimate goal of being able to link in with Hartford and their resources. We'd like to do the same thing here on a much smaller version. And we look at this as a force multiplier. As we all know, with personnel and other things going on, I'm sorry, the phone is blowing up. It's an ability for us, and it's not, the important thing is not constant surveillance 24/7. However, it will allow us the opportunity to put cameras up, let people know that there are camera systems up there in a preventative manner, and to provide safety and security for all residents and visitors to the town of West Hartford. In the unlikely event or unfortunate event that something bad were to occur, we would have the cameras to review going forward and hopefully bring that person or perpetrator to justice. This also is in conjunction with our drone program, which we initiated approximately 5 or 6 months ago, which again is a force multiplier to what we have going on.
Thank you for that, Chief. And this is obviously very timely with all that's going on right now, and I think this will be a very helpful thing to add to your toolbox here in town, and we're excited about that moving forward. Mr. Davidoff or Ms. Fay, do you have any questions on this item? Mr. Davidoff.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. No, just to say that I'm fully in support of this. So thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sweeney and Chief.
Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the chief. So is it my understanding that the funds for these cameras to be located throughout the community would augment that program that you started with individual business owners to see what's happening outside their premises as well?
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff, for that layout. And yes, this was it's an expansion of our video sharing program, which we implemented about a year ago, a few months ago, in which we had the private businesses with the town and residents with the Ring program to allow us access to their video cameras. And again, a force multiplier for the police department to provide protection and security. So it would be an expansion to that on a much grander scale.
Thank you, Chief, for the answer. And I do like your terminology, a force multiplier, because we know that our department and our personnel can't be everywhere at all the time. But when an incident occurs, it's always good if we can see if there's any resources and footage to see what may happen. And we definitely have excellent personnel working for us that can piece the puzzle pieces together and solve the crime and get some answers. And I think the community is going to feel a lot safer knowing that there's what I would call eyes in the sky. And to those who think that it would be like a Big Brother scenario, I really don't see that at all. As you pointed out, it's not something that we're going to have somebody sitting around 24/7 monitoring who's going where. If people want to see eye in the sky that monitors people, then they just really need to just hop on over to China. And there was a news story on that where they basically through visual identification, they can tell you who the person is, okay, in every particular place and every block there, and they've got people 24/7 watching. So that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. I think what we're trying to do is give you another resource, another tool in the box to solve any type of crimes that may be committed. And I think it also will give people a stronger sense of security, knowing that okay, this may have occurred, but we will get to the bottom of it. And I think it's money well spent. And I think it's important that as we look through the ARPA funding, it's those things that we're funding that need to have a long-term effect on our community. And I've said this many times, those communities that will be successful with their ARPA funds will be those that look at funding sources or use their funds in a manner that strengthens economic development and has a long-term impact, and not something that just fits a budgetary hole that the community was unable to provide for. So I think this checks that box quite nicely, and I think it will encourage businesses to locate here, knowing that there are resources available to protect their assets. So thank you, Chief, for putting this and getting this on the list. I appreciate it.
So with that, I think we can move on to item E. Thank you, Mr. Davidoff, for those comments as well. I second them, and I'm glad that we are providing some extra support to you, Chief, and your team, particularly right now with all that is going on. So with that, Peter, do you want? Is this you or the chief on item E?
I can go through the next 3 items relatively quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great.
The first item, uh, item E, is a resolution to appropriate funds for the Click It or Ticket program for the police department. We get this grant every year, so it's just a question of your approval so we can appropriate the funds. The next item is a $25,000 grant in the form of firefighting equipment. They call them bailout kits, and basically these kits are descender apparatus, ropes, and harnesses in case a firefighter gets stuck in a burning building and he has to make an emergency egress. They have the tools in a bailout bag that they can immediately exit the building through a window. And the third item is an appropriation from CDBG for a change order on a project that was already approved, to appropriate additional monies on a project that would, for Futures Inc., that would involve the installation of a wheelchair lift. So again, all 3 of these are, I would call them just routine appropriations. But again, if there are any questions on them, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Davidoff, Ms. Fay, do you have any questions?
I'm good. Thank you.
I just would offer a comment that the Futures Inc. Project, I think, got unanimous support around the council table. And I think the cost of, I think it's the wheelchair lift, came in a little higher than what was anticipated. And they do such amazing work at that facility and help a community that relies so much on that program that happens at that building, that for us to not approve this, in my opinion, would be cruel and not very heartwarming. So I anticipate that will get unanimous support tomorrow evening.
Very good point. Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. So with that, we have nothing under item number 3. I will move to item number 4 with the staff reports on the FY 2022 October projections. I hand that to you, Mr. Rivera.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Again, normally this would have come to you sooner, but this was an election year, and the November election, we didn't submit any items. The November council meeting, we didn't submit any items for action. Basically, we're flat. We have a $56,000 surplus we're projecting at this point. And we have a number of ups and downs. Our property taxes are up. We did receive the FEMA reimbursement this year. Our building permits are up. Our conveyance taxes are up. However, like everyone else, our investment income is struggling. There is not a lot of short-term investment options out there where you can basically make more than 15 basis points. On the expenditure side, if you recall, up until the end of last year, all of the non-public safety contracts had not been approved. That's why we put money in contingency. So once they were approved, we'd transfer the money out to balance out all the operating departments. And that's why you'll see on the expenditure side that we've done that. And we're basically reducing contingency by about $1.4 million. There's more reductions in there, but that's the biggest adjustment to the increases in the departments. Now, police and fire, police is up. However, part of that increase is related to a contract settlement for the current year. Some of it's related to overtime, and some of it's related to basically not having full staffing. On the fire department side, up until recently, they were down 10 positions. They've been filled. most of those people are in the academy. Some, when they get out, are going to have to go to precepting for paramedics. But I had a conversation with Chief Priest, and he told me that I think he still has roughly 7 people out on either injured on duty or maternity leave. And again, once you have to fill those slots, I mean, they're originally filled in straight time, but you know, once FMLA kicks in, we're looking at time and a half. So that's the biggest adjustment we had to make to the budget, was the fire department. And but all in all, you know, we're able to manage it. We're still looking at a flat budget. Right now, we're finishing our projections for November, and I plan on submitting them to you for the first January meeting, because I understand there's only one meeting this month. But you know, I think we're in an okay place right now, even though we do have some expenditures that are popping up a little. But if there's any question on any specific category, I'll try to answer it.
Thank you for that, Peter. Mr. Davidoff.
Just one quick category, Peter, if we could look at, and that would be parking, as we're starting to roll out of, well, I don't know if we're rolling out of it anymore. As things keep changing, there seems to be more parking activity in the center, and if we could just see how that's trending. I think we asked that question during the Special Services District meeting as well. But if we could get a better handle as to where we may be with that, that would be helpful. I read the background information on all the various things, and I think we're at the tipping point on the fire where once we have all these new people in place, that overtime number should really drop considerably in the near future. I know Chief Riddick is doing a great job managing the personnel over at the police department. His was about 1/3 of what the fire department number was. So,
Yeah.
and we don't know. We're halfway through December, and thank goodness we haven't had to put down any road treatment. So those are all favorable things, and they're saying this could be a warmer winter. So let's just hope we don't have a lot of snow incidents. So, but Mr. Phillips does a great job managing those assets as well. So it was a positive report through the end of October, and I appreciate the efforts, and we'll wait to see what we have on the January report. For I guess that would be what ends up in November, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I agree. You know, the only concern I have, and it's more so, but it's starting to calm down a little bit. After this report was completed, you know, we saw the prices of gasoline going up. We had some concerns about utility, the whole supply chain issue. I mean, I was surprised that what we're paying for a carton of copy paper that went up like 25%. But as the supply chain issue starts to ease, I know the price of gasoline has gone down per gallon, and some of the supplies and consumable supplies specifically have started to drop as well. But you're absolutely right. If we continue to have this nice weather, we should see some savings with respect to you know, our storm account in Public Works.
Sorry, you guys can't see me. If I may, Mr. Chairman, it's Mary.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and I apologize. I'm just not in a place to get to my computer. So, Mr. Privets here, really quickly. So it seems to me the drivers of the increases are, I'll call it overtime and salaries, for lack of a better word. So they're not primarily inflation driven. Maybe they are to some extent. I'm not sure, but I was just wondering if we could specifically try to find some offsets as we close out. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else we can do at this point, but one comment that Leon made kind of hit me was that everything was trending fine through October, and then all of a sudden, you know, we kind of get these variances. I'm sure not all this stuff happened in the past couple months, right? Can you just give a little more clarity on the variances? That's all. Thank you.
Sure. I think Mr. Davidoff was commenting about the parking fund, which, by the way, is doing much better. Yeah, the variances, the two significant variances that we're looking at are police and to some extent fire. And, there are also other departments, for instance, in leisure and social services, uh, we're projecting $150,000 expense related to relocation of families who were displaced when there was that flood in August, and I think there were a 6 4 unit complex. And we still have, I think, 9 families that we haven't been able to find housing for. And, according to state statutes, we're liable for that expense. And I know Helen and her team have been working very diligently trying to find housing for these people. But again, these people want to remain in West Hartford. They want their kids to go to West Hartford schools. So until we can find adequate housing, we're still liable for that. I think the biggest expense we had, and let me just talk about the police department first. Even though that is, it's up over 400,000, a good portion of that is related to a contract settlement we have with the police department. So as with anything else, I think the police department had, I think, at least 3 retirements. And every time there's a retirement, there's an expense that goes along with it for termination pay. And I know with respect to the fire department, they've had 3 retirements. But, luckily they weren't not significant cash outs. But I agree with Mr. Davidoff. When we project overtime for fire, we tend to be very conservative. And I'm hoping that, once those 10 firefighters and paramedics come online, we'll see a good drop in overtime. Those are the significant areas where we tend to focus on because they're perennial, spikes in public safety overtime.
Yeah.
And that $150,000 in leisure services, that's not something that we would normally see. I mean, unfortunately, that happened, and we have to
Sure.
cover the cost.
Sure. And I'm glad we are. That was horrible. Thanks for the further clarity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Prepatera. It is also very reassuring that you are looking at our paper prices as we are looking at the budget. So we are in great hands. It is quite clear. With that, I also just wanted to say thank you to staff for putting together these reports. I'm really excited about some of the stuff that we're going to be moving forward with at the meeting tomorrow. And the issue in regards to overtime, I think it's something that we've talked about quite extensively. And I think the chief has talked about this quite a bit, actually, that the newer members of the force are not so inclined to be participating in overtime. And I think we're going to see a little bit of a change there. I think it's kind of be a generational shift in regards to the workforce. I think we've covered that topic at kind of nauseum here in public safety. So, Chief, you don't need to opine on that. You also don't need to get in the psyche of the new recruits either. But again, really appreciate everyone's work in putting these reports together. I know that these are not simple documents to put together, and just because we're moving quickly does not mean I do not appreciate the work that you all are doing. It is great to see that we are in good financial shape. Again, this is all due to the work that you guys did prior to the pandemic, and again, I really appreciate that. Item 5, we'll move on to item 5. We don't need to discuss it now, but if folks have future items that they would like to place on the agenda for next month's meeting, please reach out to me, and I will try to accommodate your issue. So with that, I will move for adjournment, and don't believe I need a second because we're doing this virtually. So thank you all, and we will see you all tomorrow at 7:30.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.